This week on History You Missed, we will explore one of the most secretive and disturbing government programs ever declassified, involving a U.S. biochemist who was drugged without his knowledge and died under mysterious circumstances 9 days later. His name was Frank Olson. The program was called MKULTRA. It was not a theory. It was real. Thousands of pages of documents confirm it. They come from the CIA itself. And what they reveal is a story more unsettling than fiction. Join us as we calmly examine the forgotten mind of Frank Olson and the government's quietest failure. Today, on the morning of November 19, 1953, a government scientist named Frank Olson left his home in Frederick, Maryland. He kissed his wife and children goodbye. He told them he was heading to a retreat in Deep Creek Lake with his colleagues from the Army's Special Operations Division. Olson had worked there for nearly 10 years. His job was to develop aerosolized delivery methods for biological weapons. At Fort Detrick, he was known as quiet, disciplined, highly intelligent. He had clearance to some of the most classified chemical programs in the U.S. military. What he didn't know was that this retreat was not what it seemed. In the days that followed, something began to unravel. According to later testimony, Frank was dosed with LSD by his own colleagues, secretly, without his consent. The man behind the order was Sidney Gottlieb, head of the CIA's chemical branch. The purpose? To test the effects of the drug in real-world conditions. It was part of a larger program, hidden under the code name MKULTRA. 9 days later, Olson fell from a 13th-story window in New York City. The room he fell from belonged to the Statler Hotel, room 1018A. He had been taken there by a CIA handler and a psychiatrist. According to their report, he became agitated, disoriented. He jumped through a closed window and landed on the sidewalk below. The case was ruled a suicide. There was no autopsy. The family was told nothing. But 2 decades later, the truth began to surface. Frank Olson had joined Fort Detrick in 1943. He was recruited into a division that specialized in biological warfare. Anthrax, botulinum, and nerve agents were part of the daily vocabulary. He worked in a secure building. He carried a pass that granted him access to restricted labs. He had a reputation for detail. Colleagues described him as reliable, methodical, and unusually quiet. In the evenings, he walked the perimeter of the compound. His notes were handwritten. He rarely spoke of his work at home. He followed protocol. By 1952, Olson had become involved in programs testing the dispersal of biological agents. These tests were sometimes conducted on unknowing civilian populations. In New York, in the Bay Area, in isolated towns across the Midwest. According to declassified CIA files, Frank was present during several of these experiments. He began to express doubt. He questioned the ethics. His superiors noticed. And in 1953, the CIA chose him for an internal study on behavioral influence. He was not told the details. He was not given the choice to opt out. At the retreat, he drank from a bottle of liquor that had been secretly dosed with 100 micrograms of LSD. He had no idea. Over the next 72 hours, he exhibited signs of confusion, paranoia, and depression. His colleagues brought him to New York to consult a doctor. That doctor was actually a CIA SEDIT. The hotel room was under surveillance. And on the night of November 28th, Olson exited the window, fell 13 stories, and died on impact. His death was ruled a suicide, but in 1994, Olson's body was exhumed. The autopsy, led by forensic pathologist James Starrs, found no glass cuts, no wounds on his face consistent with going through a closed window. What it did find was a blow to the head, one that had occurred before the fall, possibly caused by a blunt instrument, possibly inflicted in the room. The findings were never explained. In the years that followed, Olson's son Eric launched a full investigation. He filed FOIA requests, interviewed former agents, tracked down surviving documents. He discovered that his father's name appeared in multiple MKULTRA files. Subproject 3, Subproject 35, Behavior under Chemical Influence. The records included travel vouchers, receipts, handwritten notes. One CIA memo simply read, "Olson unstable after dosing. Recommend removal." No further context was given. MKULTRA was not a single experiment. It was a program made up of 149 subprojects. It ran from 1953 to 1973. It involved dozens of universities, prisons, and psychiatric hospitals. Some experiments were consensual. Others were not. Many of the subjects were veterans, addicts, or patients in mental institutions. They were told they were part of therapy. In truth, they were part of a classified psychological weapons program. The purpose was not to cure, it was to control. Methods included electroshock, sensory deprivation, isolation, and the use of hallucinogens. One branch of MKULTRA was called Operation Midnight Climax. It involved CIA-run brothels in San Francisco. Test subjects were lured inside, drugged, and observed behind one-way mirrors. The goal was to understand how to manipulate behavior, how to extract secrets, how to erase memory. Most MKULTRA documents were destroyed in 1973 on the orders of CIA Director Richard Helms. Only a few survived, enough to confirm the scope, enough to confirm the names. Frank Olson was one of them. In 1975, the Rockefeller Commission acknowledged that Olson had been drugged without consent. In 1995, President Clinton issued a formal apology to his family. But no one was charged. No one lost their job. No cause of death was ever officially changed. And no explanation was given for the injuries found in Olson's exhumed body. Today, Fort Detrick still operates. MKULTRA is still studied in university ethics courses. And Room 1018A no longer exists. The Statler Hotel was demolished in 2001. The window Olson fell from is gone. The ledge he landed on is gone. But the questions remain. How many others were tested without consent? How many names are still redacted? How many programs were never discovered? And how much control was enough? Frank Olson was not a whistleblower. He did not go to the press. He did not threaten to expose anyone. He was quiet, dutiful, loyal, until the day he wasn't. In the end, his story is not about madness. It is about method, not about a fall, but about a system that allowed silence to become protocol. And silence, as always, leaves the deepest echo. Sleep well, and remember, some of history's quietest moments carry the loudest truths.